Oh, how's it going, everybody? We're back for another edition of All In, where I'll pick a rock artist and I'll listen to their entire discography and give my thoughts on it. And the rules go kind of like this. The band in question must have 5 or more original studio albums. Cover albums can count. I generally don't talk about live or acoustic albums unless the track's original in that form, so here we go. But this week, those rules are pretty much out the window. Why, you ask? Because we're going to do Kiss Part 2. Now, yeah, so we've come full circle. So, in the very first original All In, we talked about all the original Kiss albums. And I debated on whether or not to include the 4 solo albums in that review, but I didn't. So, I'm coming back here today to do that. But that's not all. We're also going to talk about a tribute album that pertains to Kiss. And we're also going to talk about a movie soundtrack that also pertains to Kiss. So basically the theme of this video is going to be Kiss Part 2, the extras. They're going to be albums that pertain to Kiss, but aren't really Kiss. So we're going to do a review of the 4 solo albums from 1978 that each member did. And there was one reviewer I was watching who was talking about these solo albums. And as far as like a couple of them go, like a couple of them sound a lot like Kiss, a couple of them don't. And he said it best, just go into it with an open mind. So, I guess we're going to start off, we're going to talk about Gene Simmons first, and his solo album. And all 4 of them released on the very same day, September 18th, 1978. So imagine, back in the day, bring! But imagine, like, you're a kid and you saved your allowance money. You only had enough to buy one of these albums. Which one do you pick? Tough decisions. You didn't have the interweb. You didn't have Spotify. You had none of that. So, tough choices back then. But yeah, we'll start off talking about Gene Simmons. You know, of course, the covers are like all their individual faces. So Gene only did 2 solo albums total. We're only going to go over the first one from 78, but he did his solo album in 78, and he also did an album called Asshole in 2004, which that album had like a lot more like, guests with him. But he's one of the founding members who stuck with the band, so that's why there's not many solo albums with him. So in his original album, we start off with the song Radioactive. Not a bad track. You get a little bit of an EOL vibe with that track. You have Burning Up with Fever, See You Tonight, Tunnel of Love, True Confessions, Living in Sin, Always Near You, Nowhere to Hide, Man of a Thousand Faces, Make You Believe, and he redoes See You in My Dreams. And then we end it with When You Wish Upon a Star, which is sort of like he kind of remade a Disney song here, like the Pocono song. The Pinocchio song, sorry. So kind of weird seeing him redo like a soundtrack song. So then, moving on, the next one I listened to in this order would have been Paul Stanley. So, you would know this voice. He's the main vocalist of Kiss. And also, one of the other members stayed. So, the only other solo album he did was Live to Win in 2006. Now, that is known... The song Live to Win was actually known on South Park whenever they did that episode called Make Love, Not Warcraft. And that song was actually featured whenever the boys were, like, battling, like the terror in the game. But yeah, that's where that was featured. And now, all in all, that's not a bad album either. But now, going back to the original 78 album... He starts off with Tonight You Belong to Me. You have Move On, Ain't Quite Right, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, Take Me Away, Another Together as One. You flip it over, you get It's Alright, Hold Me, Touch Me, Think of Me When We're Apart, Love in Chains, and Goodbye. And this album, this kind of sounds close to a Kiss album here. Like real good tracks, just the style of the music. You could almost mistake it as a Kiss album. Not bad at all. And then we move on to the member we just lost, Ace Frehley. So, out of the four members, he's had the biggest solo career of them all. As you know, he left the band in the 70s, and then, of course, he came back when the four members reunited, and then shortly after that reunion, he left and did more of his own solo stuff. So he definitely has a pretty good solo discography. So, like, in 87, he did Frehley's Comment, which he renamed his band Frehley's Comment. He did Second Sighting under the Frehley's Comment name. You have Trouble Walking, which then he went back to the Ace Frehley name. And in 2009, he had, what's it called? Animali. Then, in 14, you get Space Invader. And then, of course, he was doing Origins Volume 1. That's a cover album. In 18, he did Spaceman. In 20, he did Origins Volume 2, another cover album. And probably my favorite album of his in 2024, just 2 years ago, 10,000 Volts. Lots of good tunes on that one. Recommend checking that one out for sure. And then he was working on another studio album after this, whenever he had his tragic fall. So, it's a shame that all happened. He definitely had a damn good career going, though. But going back to his first album, another good solid album by him right there. You start off with Rip It Out. You got Speeding Back My Baby, Snowblind, Ozone, and What's on Your Mind. Flip it over, you have New York Groove, which is a Hello cover. You have I'm in Need of Love, Wiped Out, and we end it with the instrumental, Fractured Mirror. And really, really awesome album. I think this is the closest one that sounds like Kiss, honestly. Although the other one that he did, or not him, yeah, Paul Stanley's, I think, was close to Kiss, too. Like, Ace and Paul were the one, like, if you like Kiss, those are the two you want to pick, for sure. Now, moving on to the last one here, we got Peter Criss, or better known as the Catman. Now, he's had a little bit of a solo career going here. So, of course, you have his debut in 78, but in 1980, after he left Kiss, he did the album Out of Control, and then in 82, he did Let Me Rock You. 94, he did Cat Number 1, and then in 2007, you have One for All, and in 2025, you have Peter Criss's self-titled album, which this can be confusing because many consider his first album with Kiss the self-titled. But no, he did his own self-titled album, and what's kind of special about it is you can't download it, you can't listen to it on Spotify or even YouTube. You have to buy that one on physical, which I did. I actually found that one at Walmart for like $12.99. And all in all, that wasn't a bad album. So going back to his original, and honestly, his original, you kind of get more of like a 70s. I'm not going to say like a disco vibe, but sort of like a little bit of a funk to it. You have I'm Gonna Leave You. You have You Matter to Me. We have Tossin' and Turnin'. Don't Let You Down. That kind of sugar Papa likes. You flip it over, you got Easy Thing, Rock Me Baby, Kiss the Girl Goodbye, and Hooked on Rock and Roll, and I Can't Stop the Rain. And compared to the other three, I mean, this is my least favorite, honestly. I didn't hate it, but it just didn't appeal to me that much. I wasn't big on it. But and to be honest with you, I liked the newer Peter Criss album better than this. Which, with the newer Peter Criss, John 5 actually did some of the guitar work for, so it was a little bit heavier than what he was on here. However, he had a lot better voice on this album than he did on the newer one, which, you know, he is almost 80 years old, or he was almost 80 years old when he released that last one. But yeah, this solo album here was the furthest departure from Kiss out of all of them, I think. But again, like that one reviewer said, just go into it with an open mind. And, you know, I didn't hate it. It's definitely different. But if I was to choose amongst those four albums, I would say Ace is right at the top, for sure. Definitely Ace, and then Paul would be like a close second. Gene Simmons, and then Peter Criss holding up the last on those original 4. But kind of cool what they did there. Like, no other band that I know of has ever done this. So very ambitious in their part. I mean, 78 was a year that they didn't actually do an original studio album of Kiss, so that's when they did the solo projects. But yeah, that's pretty cool how they did that. So the next one we're going to talk about is a tribute album. It's called Kiss My Ass, Classic Kiss Regrooved. So this dropped in 1994. So you're going to get sort of a 90s alternative / grunge vibe out of this. So here we start off with Deuce by Lenny Kravitz. We have Hard Luck Woman by Garth Brooks. So yeah, very odd you see a country artist on this. You got She by Anthrax, so get some metal in there. Then you got a couple alternatives here. You got Christine 16 by the Gin Blossoms. You got Rock and Roll All Night by Toad and the Wet Sprocket, which, very odd how Rock and Roll All Night's more like slower tempoed in this version, ironically. You have Calling Dr. Love by Shandy's Addiction, sort of a little bit of a metal take on it. Going Blind by Dinosaur Jr. We got Strutter by Extreme, so Gary Cherone sort of thrown in his contribution here. So you get a little bit of like a different hair band take on this here, even though hair bands were kind of gone 2 years before this. You got Plaster Caster by the Lemonheads, sort of another modern alternative take. And then the best track I think off of this is Detroit Rock City by the Mighty Maid Boss Tones. And what's weird is like Gene Simmons was actually in the voicemail they did on this. Like when this version of the song starts off, you hear an answering machine with Gene Simmons' voice. So real cool to hear that. You know that's Kiss official when you hear that. And then you get Black Diamond by Yoshiki, which is a classical piano version of Black Diamond. So a lot of very unique takes on Kiss right here on this tribute. And you could go down the rabbit hole. There are tribute albums for days with Kiss. Like I know Hasty Dixie did one called Kiss My Grass. Bluegrass covers of Kiss, basically. And they started off doing AC/DC covers on their first album. I think this is the third album they did with Kiss, or Kiss covers. But there are so many other tribute records out there with Kiss. Like, you could go on forever with this. But this is, like, really the one that sticks out here as far as tribute albums go for Kiss. And then if you got the bonus track, you got a German version of Unholy by a band called Die Arsti. I didn't get to hear the bonus track of it. But yeah, moving on to the last thing we're going to talk about, and that's going to be the Detroit Rock City soundtrack. This right here came out in '99. So it's 15 tracks. You get a variety of covers and originals, and one original song at the end by Kiss. And I also got the movie too, the DVD. So yeah, I got both. Now, if they really wanted to, they could have like made a box set out of all the songs that were really featured on this. Like, there were so many songs on this movie that were left off of this. Definitely recommend checking out that movie. So, basically the storyline of the movie is, you know, the timeline is like 1978, and it's basically these 4 high school kids who had a tribute band called Mystery, which was a Kiss cover band. And the premise of the movie was they tried to drive from Cleveland to Detroit to see the Kiss concert. Well, they scored Kiss tickets, and of course, Jam's mom ends up taking them and burning them. So then they try to win the tickets on a radio station, and they got so excited that they hung up on the radio station before claiming the tickets. And then they drove all the way out there to realize they're not getting the tickets. So you'll have to watch the rest of the movie, but damn good stuff right there. But anyhow, going over the soundtrack, you have Everclear covering The Boys Are Back in Town by Thin Lizzy. And then you have the original version of Kiss with Shout It Out Loud. You have the original version Van Halen, Running with the Devil. You have Pantera making a cover of Cat Scratch Fever. Really good cover there. Love it. You have Black Sabbath doing Iron Man, of course. Very original. Then we have Marilyn Manson doing a cover of Highway to Hell by AC/DC, which I didn't care much for that cover. Then you have Drain STH doing a cover of 20th Century Boy by T-Rex. Then, going back to the original stuff, you have Kiss with Detroit Rock City, Thin Lizzy with Jailbreak. And I remember, whenever you heard the song on the movie, That's whenever they put like all the hallucinating shrooms in the pizza and the pastor ate it and started seeing shit. That's a real funny part. And then that's when they took off to go to Detroit. Then we have a live version of Surrender by Cheap Trick. We have the original version of David Bowie, Rebel Rebel. Then we have the Donnas covering Strutter, which the Donnas were sort of like that 70s theme band, even though they were in the 2000s. Real cool band. Then we have the Runaways with School Days, a 70s original right there. Another original, we have Sweet with Little Willie. Yeah. Insert bad joke here. And then we end it with the only original song to the soundtrack, Kiss, doing Nothing Can Keep Me From You. And this song is exclusive to this soundtrack. You can't find it on any of the original albums. But I think I did talk about this on the original video. But I didn't go over it in detail. But damn good movie. Damn good soundtrack. But that's pretty much my take on Kiss albums that aren't really Kiss. So yeah, like I said, we've come full circle, so consider this Kiss Part 2 in the All In series. So what will come next? I don't know. Just stay tuned and find out. We'll see you later.